Hey everybody, it's Mr. Grooch. This video is for 5-6 on your packet. Okay, it should say objective. Students will gain a basic understanding of how democracy started in ancient Greece. This week we're going to take a step back from just looking at the Constitution and kind of where we got some of our ideas. Okay, so there are 3 articles in your packet. First one is Ancient Greece. Democracy is born. That's the one we're going to do today. Second one is Greek influences on U.S. democracy. And third, this is an important one because a lot of people misspeak when they call us a democracy because we're more than that. We're a republic, okay? And so the difference between a democracy and a republic, okay? So I'm going to read this to you. You can follow along and then answer the questions that follow in your packet. There are 4 of them today. We should probably read them before we read the packet. So here we go. Read the summary below. Choose the best answer that fits into the blank. The first democracy began 2,500 years ago in Athens, Greece, but it was not fair for everyone. Blank. During that time, people came together in assemblies to discuss important ideas, and all citizens in democracy were expected to vote. Modern democracies are different because some let their citizens choose to vote, and many elect representatives to make the decisions for them. That's question 1. Question 2, read the paragraph below. In Athens, the people governed the majority, and the majority ruled. All citizens had equal rights and powers. Athenian democracy depended on every citizen fulfilling his duty. All citizens were expected to vote, but they were also expected to serve in the government if necessary. Every citizen was required to take part or suffer punishment. In this sense, modern democratic governments are quite different. For example, in the United States, citizens are free to choose whether or not they wish to vote. And then, in the context of the article, what is the purpose of that paragraph? Number 3, based on the article, which of the following is true? Number 4, read the following selection from the article. In a city-state as small as Athens, a pure democracy was possible. Which sentence supports the conclusion that pure democracy was possible in the city-states of Athens? Okay, here we go. Short reading. It is 558 words. Ancient Greece, democracy is born. Excuse me. Ancient Greece was made up of several small city-states, including Athens and Sparta. Democracy began in Athens around 500 BC, about 2,500 years ago. In ancient Greek democracy, citizens were given the right to vote. Not everyone in Athens was considered a citizen, however. Only free adult men enjoyed the rights of citizenship. That meant that only about 1 out of 5 people in Athens was a citizen. Women were not citizens and therefore could not vote or have any say in the political process. They were rarely permitted out in public and were restricted as to where they could go in their own homes. Slaves and foreigners were not citizens either. In the end, democracy existed only for the free men who were originally from Athens. So we think of this democracy, this Athens, as this great place of freedom, and it really wasn't. I mean, it was for very specific people, right? People that were born in Athens and that were men. Everybody else kind of just lived by their rules, okay? So democracy basically means government of the people, the DEMO, same as like demographics, or the people. The voice of the people is supposed to run the government, but really it's just the voice of the men that were born in Athens. Okay, I digress. Nevertheless, the ideas of democratic government is one of the most significant contributions of the ancient Greeks. Athens had one of the largest democracies in terms of population. Political reformation. Early in Athens history, a man named Solon made political reforms. These helped reduce the growing gap between the rich and the poor. Poor citizens gained the right to sit in the assembly and vote. The assembly was responsible for electing military and other leaders. Later, Cleisthenes, I think, expanded the democracy by giving every citizen equal rights. He also created a group of lawmakers for Athens. They were picked randomly from the general population of citizens. When there was an assembly meeting, the citizens of Athens would usually gather in the agora. This was a large open space in the middle of the city. It contained a marketplace as well as government buildings. In the agora, citizens would discuss the issues of the day before gathering for the assembly meeting. During the meeting, citizens were free to share their opinions and cast their votes. The courts were also usually in the agora. The jury in the court cases were very large, often numbering in the hundreds and sometimes in the thousands. To be fair, Athenians wanted their juries to reflect the general population. There were no lawyers because each citizen was expected to make his own case. Every citizen participated. In Athens, the people governed and the majority ruled. All citizens had equal rights and powers. Athenian democracy depended on every citizen fulfilling his duty. All citizens were expected to vote, but they were also expected to serve in the government if necessary. Every citizen was required to take part or suffer punishment. In this sense, modern democratic governments are quite different. For example, in the United States, citizens are free to choose whether or not they wish to vote. In a city-state as small as Athens, a pure democracy was possible. But as states grew larger, democracy changed. It became more practical for people to elect representatives to make decisions for them. But the notion that every citizen has a vote, has a voice important enough to be heard, began in ancient Athens. Okay, stumbled there a little bit, but I'm sorry. One story that I've heard about how they punished or how they recognized who didn't vote in something is they would take this long rope and they would dip it in paint and they would kind of like go through the agora or the marketplace or any place people were assembled, and they wore those white tunics or the white togas, and anything that bumped up against that, the citizen knew that if they had a big line from that paint or that dye on the rope, then they knew that they weren't where they were supposed to be voting, and so that's how they were punished. There's a lot of fun stories like that out there. The agora was a great place to come together and exchange ideas, but also to vote. And so this idea of democracy where the majority of the people are in charge of a government, comes from Athens. Athens wasn't huge, okay? So that allowed them to have a pure democracy. And when they say pure democracy, what they're talking about is everybody votes on everything in a true democracy or pure democracy. Think about that for a second now for Minnesota or for Bloomington, wherever you live, or the United States as a whole. If we had to vote on every single thing, that would be very, very difficult to do logistically, like getting everybody to do it. And you might be saying, well, everybody's got cell phones, we could just do that. And that's true. Maybe the technology we have today would allow for us to do that. But think about it. Do you really want everybody to vote on everything, considering that we don't have the time to research it, right? And so it might be a really good idea, but I don't have the time to vote or to research it, and then I just vote without that knowledge, okay? And so that's why we've taken this idea of a pure democracy and turned it into a representative democracy. And we'll get into that later this week, but where we hire or we elect people to vote for us, right? And so their job, the people we send to Washington, D.C. or St. Paul or city council or whatever, they were representing our needs. And so they are there to research and make the best decision based on what they think for us. Okay, so the rest of the day for Trivium is really answering those 4 questions. If you didn't get to it yesterday, please try to play Sortify. It's a quick game about U.S. citizenship, and it's pretty fun. Okay, if you have any questions, please reach out. If not, take care, and I'll see you tomorrow.